So today, where we are, it's Friday, December the 11th. We're glad to be back with you. We understand that COVID has been increasing in the institutions. We hope you are well and that people are getting the care and support they need to keep them safe and to help those who are ill. A hard time for sure. We hope your families as well are doing okay. I'm Ms. Shepherd. I'm here today with Mr. Keogh for a mindfulness session, and we're very glad to have you with us. Maybe before I have Mr. Keogh introduce himself, we'll run this the way we always have, which means we'll do a guided meditation at the beginning, then we'll have some reflections, some conversation, and then another guided meditation at the end. And with that, Mr. Keogh.
So hello, I'm Mr. Keogh, and I'm one of the mindfulness volunteers. Glad to be making your acquaintance, even though you can't introduce yourself to me. I've been, just by way of introduction, I've been part of the, we call ourselves the Wisconsin Prison Mindfulness Initiative. And I've been doing this at various places, the southern half of Wisconsin, maybe for 6, perhaps 7 years now. So I'm glad to be able to be viewed by you, even though much rather be seeing you in a face-to-face group. And we're just waiting for that to happen to be able to get back. Anyway, let's start as we normally do with a little grounding, centering experience, short meditation. And if you're just tuning in for the first time, maybe you're curious about this and you look to see what this is, or maybe you just kind of stumbled on it. This is a chance to experience just a little taste of what it is that we call meditation. So I'm going to begin with the ringing of the bell, and that's just it's kind of like calling us to order. So if you could kind of get into a position, if you're sitting, sit so that you're not likely to fall asleep. You want your mind to be alert, but your body to be relaxed. So sitting upright is usually the way to do it, or you can be standing or even laying down. But just listen to the bell. Drop the concerns, the questions, the anxieties, and just listen to the bell coming in through the little speaker. And take a couple deep breaths. And this is just to kind of bring us again into what are we feeling right now? What are we hearing? What are we feeling right now? Take another breath, deep, deep, and hold it for a beat, and then let it out slowly. Do that again. Notice how it feels to fill up the lungs. When you're meditating, you're typically sitting still or being still. So your position hopefully is one that you don't have to be adjusting a lot or fidgeting around, or this, we're not in a situation where we have to be absolutely frozen, but we want the mind to settle down, not be busy. So settle into what it feels like to breathe. Take a couple more nice deep breaths. Notice what they feel like. Then let the breath get natural, whatever that is, and notice what else you feel in your body. You might have some pain that you notice right away, and move on from the pain to other feelings that are much more subtle, like your weight. If you're sitting, notice the weight that's pushing you onto the chair or onto the cot. Notice your fingers. They might be touching your knees, or they might, you might be hand in hand. What are your fingers feeling? Any other parts of your skin that touching maybe the collar, your neck on the collar of your shirt? Maybe your skin is feeling a little coolness. Sensations on the inside of your body. Are there any other kinds of cricks, or you notice the way your legs feel? What do you notice about what you feel in your feet? Maybe there's gravity keeping your feet on the floor, even though you're not standing. Maybe there's some coolness in your feet. Come back to the breath. What do you feel of the breathing? Not thinking about it, but feeling it. For me, there's a little cool air coming in the tip of my nose. And then on the out breath, I don't notice it so much. It's warmer. But every in breath, I feel more vividly. If I open my mouth, I can feel the air coming through my mouth. Little motion in my chest. My belly is moving. So we are right now practicing mindfulness meditation because we're being mindful of how our body feels. And one thing that's pretty almost all the time is that the mind is not going to stay on what we're paying attention to. It's jumping around. It could be anything, could be thoughts of the past or what's going to happen next, or maybe just even random thoughts. That just happens. It always happens. If your mind is jumping around like that, if it gets too wild, if it gets too far, you forget really what you're doing at all, then bring it back. Bring it back maybe to the breath because there's movement there and that's a little easier to notice. Let's try this a little bit while I'm quiet. Just when the mind wanders somewhere else, bring it back, maybe to the breath. And do that maybe again and again. And when I start talking again, just use my words, the sound of my voice as a reminder to come back to the breath. There's an in-breath and an out-breath, and then a pause where there's no motion, then the in-breath. If there are sounds, noises, distracting things, try to let them just bounce off your skin. So keep them outside of yourself. and keep your mind inside in the feeling of breathing, the feeling of just being in the position that you're in. If this feels a little hard to do and you're getting impatient, we're only going to do this for another minute. So just make the most of this minute. Be very present in yourself. Now there'll be a last couple of breaths and then I'll ring the bell. And we come back to outside of ourselves. And for me, it's talking. And for you, it's viewing. So take a moment and just notice how you feel right now compared to how you felt 5 minutes ago. And just know that that's something that's within your power to do. You don't need to have somebody talking to you on a screen. You don't need to have a bell. You don't even need to have quiet around you. So that's within your power. So thanks for staying with me as we did that little practice, that little experience. I'd like to share some reflections now, just on this, really staying close to home to what we just did when we're talking about meditation and mindfulness. And you'll notice that when I was guiding, I was talking a little bit about noticing if you had any pain, noticing what your body sensations were. And then we came back to the breath. I guess we started out with a couple nice deep breaths. And then we came back to the breath. And the breath, sometimes there are dozens of different meditation techniques. And there are lots of things that people do on their own that they don't even call meditation, but that I would call it meditation. But what we're teaching is sometimes called breath meditation, mindfulness meditation. It's not the only one. It's not necessarily the best, but we can only teach one. We don't want to teach a whole bunch and confuse people. And also, I think that it's maybe for most people the easiest. And when we talk about coming back to the breath, there's movement there. So it's a little easier for the mind to kind of notice the breath. It's not quite as tough a job to come back when my mind has been wandering and I notice, oh man, it's been 2 minutes and here I am, I'm on thought number 15. I started out with what's going to be for lunch, and I ended up thinking about how did they eat in ancient Africa? Like I'm just all over the map, and that happens. It happens to us all. Ms. Shepherd and I have been practicing for a long time, but it's still something that it's not something that we have to get over. It's just something that we pay attention to and we adjust to it when it happens. And it's kind of a mindfulness is kind of a continual nonstop adjusting to whatever's going on in this mind. And the adjustment is coming back to what I intend to do, which is to be in a place where my mind can become peaceful. Sometimes I use I use the metaphor or the picture, the story. My mind is like a puppy dog. And the puppy dog, if you've had a puppy dog, or if you've been around one, you know how energetic they are. They're running around all the time. Some of them are yapping, but even if they're not yappers, they're running around all the time. They've got so much energy. They're bouncing off the walls. They're not going to sit still. And a lot of times that's my mind. And I think of my mind as a puppy dog. It's just running all over. It will not sit still. I can tell it over and over again, sit still, it might for an instant, but what am I going to do? Am I going to get mad at the puppy dog? It's being a puppy dog. Am I going to try to make it sit still by whipping it? No way. No way. It's totally not right. No, but I'm going to keep on because I don't want that puppy dog to run over into the neighbor's yard. I don't want it to get lost. So when I notice that it's gone too far, I'll bring it back. And that's my mind. Or all of our minds. And I'm going to encourage you, don't get too disgusted or think that this is not for you, that you can't do it. I've seen hundreds of guys in prison, and guys have given up on themselves, but nobody has not been able to do it. Nobody has come back and said, people come back and say, this isn't working for me. And then I say, well, what is this that you're trying to do? And then we find out, oh, they're trying too hard. They're trying to make that puppy dog sit in one place for 5 minutes at a time. It's not going to happen. That's not what you're trying to do. You want to be bringing it back again and again. And the habit, and you develop a better habit of recognizing the puppy dog's gone. That happens more quickly. And that's the key. That's the key. So your puppy dog didn't go into the neighbor's yard. You noticed when it was gone pretty quickly. And that's what happens. If you kind of keep track, you're starting to do this, you kind of keep track of how it's going. We kind of encourage you, start small, start with a few minutes, start with 3 minutes or less, and do it regularly. Don't just do it once a week. That's not very good for developing a habit. Do it more frequently. Do it, if it's short and you've got the time, do it a couple times a day, 3 times a day. Whenever there's something that might remind you. I've had guys say they do it first thing in the morning, and other guys say they do it right at mealtime or something. And I've had guys say, if I haven't done it all day, when I'm ready to go to sleep, and I just remember, did I meditate? And if I haven't meditated, then I'll do it then, so that I haven't missed the day. The idea is do it frequently, not for a real long time. And what you're doing, you're practicing noticing when your mind drifted away, and then you bring it back. So anyway, that was a little bit of how often to do it. And then what do we do? Well, like I said, the breath seems to be the easiest thing to notice because it's in motion, it's in movement. But sometimes, for me, the breath doesn't work too well. Especially if something has happened earlier in the day where I'm pretty stirred up. I can't stop coming back to some event that happened. Sometimes that's the time when I need the meditation the most, but it's the hardest. And the breath just isn't working for me. I try it, and I tried some deep breaths, and it's not working. Well, anywhere in the body, anywhere in the body, let the puppy dog have a little bit more range, like paying attention, my age, almost every day, I got something that's aching, and, I got some pain somewhere, and so I'll come back and say, okay, what's hurting right now? And if there's nothing hurting, it's like, great, there's nothing hurting right now. And then I'll go to, what's it feel like to be sitting? What's my weight on the cushion? But a lot of times there's a little, if it's nothing else, it's kind of like, oh, there's something in the digestive system. there's a little pull in my lower gut here, that I didn't even notice, but now I'm noticing it. So if I can't stay with the breath very well, I kind of do a little bit of looking at my body. What do I notice that's kind of a little easier for me to pay attention to? And I'll use that to come back to when my mind drifts out. So I've told the puppy story a lot of times. You guys might have heard it before, but I've got a new wrinkle on it now. And that's that. When does the puppy stop? It stops when it sniffs something, when it notices something. It's running all around and then it notices something that it's curious about. And it'll stop for a little bit and sniff that thing out before it jumps again. What we're doing, if we can't stay with the breath, we're kind of looking to see what is the object of my curiosity? My mind might stop at some place because it's kind of curious about it. And so that's kind of, and it won't stay in one place either. So I look for another place, and I'll kind of let that puppy dog mind kind of sniff around and see what interests it. And I don't. The idea is to make this light, to totally sidestep any notion that I'm not doing it right, totally sidestep any notion that, oh, this is too hard. It's like, can you make it fun? And that's kind of a lot of the people much more experienced, the people that are actually professional teachers. We're just retirees, but they're professional teachers, and they'll talk a lot about spending time after the mind has settled, even spending time on paying attention to mindfulness of the body. Interesting. Spending time on noticing not just the most obvious things, the aches and the pains and the things that are really obvious, or a lot of times when we guide, we'll say, notice your shoulders. You got tension in your shoulders, let them relax. Notice your face, notice your jaw, let it relax. And then you kind of, oh, this opens up some new knowledge for me. I'm walking around with a tense jaw and I didn't even know it. That's good, because that's an insight. That's a little bit more self-knowledge than you had before you sat and meditated. And that's good. So teachers will say, paying attention to the body will give you more self-knowledge than you had otherwise, which can be very valuable. Not just in knowing that you've got an ache in your stomach, but what about those more subtle feelings? What if there's a tightness that I've been walking around with, tightness that kind of indicates, you know what, I've got some anxiety that I didn't even recognize. There are physical feelings that tell us a lot about ourselves. I just kind of want to put that out to you, that you can profitably spend a fair chunk of your meditation time just trying to get more and more sensitive about what exactly am I feeling. And it's doing two things. Number one, the reason that we're coming back, the reason that we're bringing the puppy dog back again and again and again, is that we're training our mind, we're training our habits to notice when we're off somewhere that's not under our control. When our mind is influenced too much by what it's going on out there, and not influenced enough by our own wants, desires, best intuitions, our values. We're not being our own self enough, because we're too much running around in the neighbor's yard. We're too much being influenced by whatever happens. Whatever happens triggers me, and I'm gone. And I wasn't my own self. I wasn't fully in control. I was a little bit too much under the influence of other things, and that's the reason for coming back. But then while we're coming back, not only am I less under the influence of other things, but I'm also more in touch and more knowledgeable about myself. So I've got some other things to say, but maybe I'm going to take a little breather here, because I've been going a mile a minute, and wonder if Miss Shepherd, I'm going to come back and say a couple other things, but do you have anything that you'd want to kind of put your own thoughts into this mix, Ms. Shepherd? Oh, you might be muted right now. I see your lips, but I don't hear you. I still can't hear you.
Now we got it.
Now.
Okay.
Hi.
Thank you. So thank you, Mr. Keogh. Mindfulness of the body, as he was talking about, is really a core practice. It's really, in some ways, it's everything we do. And the reason for that is that generally or frequently before we're aware of meditation and these practices, we kind of live in our thoughts. But our thoughts are constructed. They're put together. They're based on our feelings and our perceptions and our views and opinions. The body and experiencing what's actually happening in the body is based on what's really going on. It's like the difference between saying that's a pretty rock. That's trying to assess the rock and just defining it and putting my view and opinion on it, and saying that's granite. That's what it is. So mindfulness of the body is trying to help us connect with what's actually going on in this moment, and not being so connected to what we usually do, which is our views and opinions and thoughts about what's going on. So the point is to teach us, how do we connect with what's really happening? And the very best way to do that is through the body. So Mr. Keogh talked about using mindfulness of the body when the mind is busy or we're having trouble with connecting with the breath, and that is a wonderful way. But we can also use mindfulness of the body around difficult feelings, difficult emotions, when we get concerned or carried away, when we know we're carried away by something. Rather than continuing to build and feed all of those thoughts and stories what he should do or what you should do or what they did or all of those things, rather than getting caught in all of that in our minds, we can come to the body. What am I actually feeling right now? Feeling in terms of the body, not feeling in terms of I like it or I don't like it. Feeling in terms of actual, as Mr. Keogh talked about, my chest is tight, or maybe my arms are all, my shoulders are high. And just getting us feeling that, and then not forcing things to change necessarily, but usually in the process of paying attention to what's occurring within the body, things relax, because it's not comfortable to hold your shoulders up like that. It's more comfortable when they are down. That when we're aware of the tension in them, it's almost actually difficult to sustain that tension, that they naturally relax. And the breath is often, paying attention to the breath is paying attention to the body when we can really connect with breath sensation, when it's not our ideas about the breath. So one of the, we learn that a lot through the exhalation, that we start to notice that on the exhalation of the breath, the body actually relaxes. On the inhalation, it kind of gets a little bit more energized. So this idea of getting more, it's really about getting connected to the body, to bodily sensations, which of course include the breath. One of the other ways that is often taught to connect to bodily sensations is to connect what are often referred to as the elements. So everything in the world is actually composed of air, water, earth, substance of some sort, and fire or heat. So paying attention to these elements within the body can actually be really useful. So let me talk about that just a little more. So earth element within the body just means weightiness, groundedness. And being grounded is very important in our meditation practice, a sense of groundedness. You know, when we're not grounded, we're spinning all over. So one thing you can do in the meditation is to notice, where is there a sense of weight, heaviness, earth, solidity can also be. So you can think about it in any of those ways. Are there some areas that feel solid? Maybe are there parts of the body that you actually maybe don't feel at all? Which areas feel solid, grounded? Which areas maybe are absent? You know, do I have any sensation at the top of my head? I don't know. Worth investigating. Check it out. So earth is the first one. The second one, and they're not in any particular order, you can do them whatever order you'd like, is air. So air is a sense of, it can be actual air. When we're breathing, we can feel air moving, but more sort of globally, it's kind of a sense of movement, of wind or movement or space. So again, if you're paying attention to the body, maybe there's a sense that within the ribs, there's this more spacious area, whereas in my arm feels pretty, not feels this way, but feels internally kind of solid. I don't feel space in my arm, but there is a sense of space in my trunk. In my mouth, there's a sense of spaciousness. So air can be either movement or it can be this sense of space. So that would be something you could investigate. Go through the body and notice, are there any areas in the body where there's a sense of spaciousness or motion? So that's earth and air. Water is interesting. So water can be liquid, like water, but it's also a sense of cohesiveness, connectedness. You know how when you spill water, it doesn't scatter. You know, it's not like when you break a piece of glass and it breaks into a million pieces. When you spill water, it stays together. So it's that sense of cohesiveness, connectedness, that is the idea of attending to the element of water within the body. So noticing what in the body, maybe there's this, you know, sometimes our gut, we can have a sense of liquid and movement, and maybe, so that can be water, but also it's just a sense of connectedness. Does the body right now feel, you know, does my hand feel connected to my shoulder, or do they feel quite far apart? It's worth investigating, sort of examining. So water can be either a sense of, you know, saliva, that's water, so feeling the wetness of the saliva, but it can also be feeling a sense of connection between my neck and my shoulders. What does that feel like to feel connection? That's, you know, not the idea that it's connected, not the image, because I've seen a picture of myself, but feeling internally, do I feel anything connecting my shoulders and my neck internally? It's a felt experience, not a visual experience. We're very used to examining and experience our body based on what we see, but that's not really an experience. That's a story. It looks to me like X. We're trying to get the actual physical experience of the body. So we talked about earth, water, air, and the final one is fire. So fire is temperature, heat, cool. Can I go through the body and examine, are there areas that are warm? Areas that I can't really perceive any temperature at all? And areas that actually feel cool? And how does that change? And of course it will, right? Maybe an area that used to feel quite cool suddenly starts to feel warm, and vice versa. So examining the body in terms of these elements can actually be a very useful practice and a very helpful way to get into the body, to get into this practice of experiencing the body. And when we do that, we're being with what really is happening, right? Because you're not making up what's happening in the body. It's either happening or it's not happening. What we are doing is learning, can I connect with it? Can I start to actually notice, just as Mr. Kyo was saying, start to notice that, oh, I never realized I do have sensations in the back of my hand. It wasn't immediately apparent to me, but the more I sort of connect there, try to put attention there, I start to realize, oh, well, there is sort of a kind of a little fuzzy feeling there, or maybe a coolness, or maybe a warmth. So we're starting to to learn how to experience the body. That for most of us, we've never learned that. We've always lived just in our thoughts. And the more we practice connecting with the body, the easier it gets. It is a practice, and it's a skill we develop that we just haven't done before. It's not like all these things aren't happening in the body, right? The body is a busy place, all kinds of stuff happening in there all the time, but we've never cued into it. We've never felt into it. And so the more we learn how to really feel into what's happening in the body, again, as Mr. Kyo said, that actually teaches us a lot about ourselves. We can start to notice what happens when I feel resistance. So, for example, this morning I happened to walk into one of the rooms in the house here that had a television going, and the news that was being reported was something that I found incredibly distressing, disturbing, upsetting, angering. It was sad, grief. It was awful. So noticing, rather than going into the story about how awful it was and who did that and why did it happen and all that, to instead say, well, what's happening in my body when those feelings arise? And it was a tightness in the chest. It was my shoulders had gotten tight and short, up high. I wasn't breathing very deeply. So just starting to recognize those things. I had almost not quite chills, but that sort of sensation through my legs. So just letting yourself sit with what it is that's actually occurring in the body is one of the ways that we wake up, that we become more aware of what's happening in our own experience, and then have the ability to respond to what's happening with some wisdom. So that if we know that our body has gotten quite tight and tense, likely our mind is there as well, and we can prevent our mouth from going there. So maybe that's enough for now, but these ideas of the elements, I think, can be really helpful. Maybe one last thing is that it's also a really lovely way to connect into nature. That even if you have only a tiny window, or you're only seeing the outside when you're walking from your cell, if you're able to, once the lockdown's off, across to another place, we really do connect to what's happening in nature, what's happening in the weather. So when it's raining, maybe you might feel a little more sense of motion and connectedness and water in your body. When it's cold out, certainly you do feel temperature more likely in your body. So it's just a way to connect to all of life, and especially to one's own life. Mr. Keo.
Well, thank you. Yeah, I was going to add to what you said, that if you see something on television that's bothersome, there's nothing that you can do. But being aware of the way you're reacting, you might unconsciously, your body, your emotions might have taken that in and acted out in a way that's totally not what you had planned to do, but it's affected you in some way that suddenly you might lose it, with your whoever, your husband or something without, and it wasn't his fault. It's just that something was bothering you and it's down below what you can do and, that you can deal with. But if you notice this, oh, this is really, upsetting. I am upset right now. That knowledge, I am upset right now, is a big step away from being upset without recognizing it. So I used your example, but I think that it also applies if it's not like television where obviously you can't do anything about it. It could be something closer to home, something where you might be able to do something about it, but anything you do is not going to be good. Being aware of those things, it's even more important, so that you're not, your tongue, your voice has swung into action before your mind did. We all do that. We all can do that. You know what I'm talking about. And so having a little bit of an early warning system that I'm vulnerable to this. I got to keep a little bit firmer grasp on my tongue right now. I think that's a very valuable thing. I kind of did want to add to everything else. We've been kind of going at it from a lot of directions, but I kind of wanted to say, in a very practical way, and kind of starting from what we've just been talking about, in a very practical way, we meditate. We're sitting. We're intentionally meditating now. But then there's the rest of life, and we use the word we're practicing. We've got a meditation practice. I've got a mindfulness practice. We're practicing so that we can bring these skills that we've developed through repetition into the game. Like the practice happens Monday through Saturday, but then the NFL, you're on the field on Sunday, right? That's the real thing. Well, we're practicing meditation when we intentionally sit, if it's 3 minutes or if it's 15 minutes or longer. We're practicing so that in life and the rest of life, we're more mindful. And the examples that we gave, the reaction to a TV or reaction if somebody says something, that's real life. We're more likely to be able to notice our body, come back to our body, if we've had this practice. But I had the experience. I'll tell you a story. One time I was leading a group at one of the, it was at Oak Hill. I was leading a group at Oak Hill, and we got in the room and guys were forming. We hadn't quite begun yet. And I remembered that I had left something that was pretty important back at security when we went through security. I don't remember what it was, but it was like, I have to have that. I have to walk. And at Oak Hill, it's quite a walk between security gate and the school. Or we were in social services building, even farther than the school. It's like, okay, I'll be right back, and so I'm trotting all the way quarter mile back to the gate, pick it up, and then I'm kind of walking back, and it dawns on me, I could be mindful right now. I'm going in to teach about mindfulness. I could be mindful right now. And so I was walking at a fast pace, but rather than my mind being on, oh, how stupid was I? Or how am I'm feeling bad. Those guys are waiting for me. I'm feeling bad. Or those guys, I hope that they're okay. I hope they're not going to be angry or whatever. I thought, you know what? None of those thoughts have anything to do with changing reality. Okay. What could I be doing right now? I can be noticing the way it feels to be walking, noticing my body. So I had the presence of mind, I guess you'd say. I had the mindfulness to kind of go, let's notice what it feels like, these steps, foot hitting the ground, legs swinging. I didn't slow down. I was not into a slow meditative walk. I was scurrying back, but my mind got a lot slower. And that trip back, I don't even know how long it might have been, maybe another 3 or 4 minutes. Those last 3 or 4 minutes, number one, they're much more enjoyable. Number two, I was in a much better frame of mind when I re-entered that room. Okay. So there were real valuable payoffs for my remembering to pay attention to my body, to use my body as the object of mindfulness. And of course, when you're walking, it's easy to use your body because there's all kinds of things to think about. All right. I'm not losing track. I'm watching my feet. I'm not going to step in any potholes. I'm alert. I'm connected to the world, and I know what I'm about. I'm getting back there as quickly as I can. But my mind can do all those things and still notice the way my arms are swinging. Notice the way my feet, my legs are feeling. I can do all that. It's not hard. We can do that. We can multitask. So I use that as an example, and I want to encourage people to do this through the day. Another time that we all run into, I don't know if you guys are ever late and you're in a hurry, but you probably are in lines, at least when you're not locked down. And lines are a perfect time to bring the mind back to the body. What's your alternative? Stew about how long the guy in front of you is taking, or the people that are serving or whatever they're doing, why don't they move faster? That's creating, it's not solving any problems, but it is creating more tension. So I do this. So I was at the grocery store this morning before we started meditating, and I was running a little late, but I was paying attention to the way it felt. Number one, I was feeling my breath, but I don't have to be on my breath. I can feel the way it feels to stand there, and I can feel, I want to be present. I want to just be in the moment rather than leaning forward into what is only a painful future. The future is not painful, but my leaning into it is painful. It's creating more aggravation. There's enough aggravation already in this world. We can kind of subtract some by coming into our body. So those are two things that we're kind of using the body as a refuge from something that would be otherwise your mind would be a source of aggravation. But other times, I've been accused by guys in our mindfulness group in the prison that we're always talking about bad things, like being angry and getting into trouble and stuff like that. So what about good things? So how many guys are where you are because of desires, because you wanted good things, and there's a fair amount of that where we're striving to get something and it's getting us into trouble. Well, there again, paying attention to the body is an early warning sign that, I really, really want this. And the earlier you can realize how strong this is, it's less strong. It becomes stronger. Desires become more stronger as we feed them. We want them, we pay attention to them, we notice them, we kind of imagine them. We're living in the future again. That desire becomes harder and harder to quell. Early on, it's like, oh, I'm feeling this desire. Maybe it's time for me to distract myself. Maybe it's time to think about something else. So that early warning system aspect of paying attention to the body. And then one last thing, practical thing, is that as we get more experienced and it's easier for us to notice when the puppy dog mind is rambling around, during life, we can be practicing bringing the puppy dog mind back again and again, not for 3 minutes, not for 20 minutes when we're sitting, but for the space of a breath, the space of 2 breaths. I can sit, I can, whatever I'm doing, oh, I want to bring my mind back to the way it feels to breathe, or I want to bring my mind back to the way my fingertips feel, or whatever, the bottom of my feet. And I just do that for the space of a breath, and then it's on with life. And I haven't really interrupted life either. It's while nobody notices it. I'm listening to somebody and I'm paying attention to every word they say, but I'm also paying attention to the way my feet feel as I'm standing there. And I'm doing this as a practice to develop that habit where I'm more mindful more often, so that when there are things coming that are really strong, that are really pulling me out of the present moment, I've got a little bit more strength of my mindfulness to kind of my mindfulness, my body is my refuge at those times. Will I remember to use it? So, talked a lot. Um, I'm thinking maybe that we've been talking about all this stuff. Maybe we should practice it again, or I'll pass it to you. And if you have any other comments to add.
No, I think we should do a final meditation. Great. So put up the image if you'd like to keep your eyes on the image. Otherwise, gently close your eyes if you're willing. And I think bring the attention into the body, as we've been talking about. Just get a sense of having a body. Often the weight of the body, that's a form of the earth element, the solidity. The body is composed of earth, air, fire, and water. It's composed of those elements. So getting a sense of how those elements are operating in any moment can be a very useful way of connecting into the body. And I think earth element is probably the one that is often most evident. So for the next several moments, maybe you've all hopefully done a body scan before, where you just move through the parts of the body. You can start at your feet and move up. You can start at your head and move down. You can start in your belly and move various directions. But maybe I'll start at the head and just see if there's a sense of weight. Does it feel light or heavy? Does it feel grounded or flighty? Notice any sense of ground or weight at the head. And then move into the shoulders and the neck. For me, I realized that when I talked about the weight of the head, suddenly I felt an activation in my neck and shoulders, that my neck and shoulders carry the weight of the head. So is there a sense of weight or solidity in the neck and shoulders? What might you feel there? Just noticing, not requiring it to feel any particular way. Noticing how it does feel is what we're after. And then moving into the upper arms. For me, actually, right now, I'm feeling temperature in my upper arm. Sense of temperature and maybe a little bit of water, a cohesive element. It's sort of a movement up and down. And moving into your lower arms. So the elbow and below. Does it feel solid? Does it feel connected? Is there a temperature happening there? Does it feel spacious and open? What is it you're feeling? And moving into the hands. sort of sensations or experiences happening regarding the element of what you could feel in the hand. Sometimes our visual sense of the body is so strong, so habitual, that it can be hard to feel what's actually happening there. So as much as you can, let go of any images you have about these various body parts and just feel what you actually experience, dropping any ideas about the shape of the hand or the weight of the hand, and really feeling it. Maybe you don't feel something that has 5 extensions on it. Maybe it feels more just like a single blob. But that's what we're after, is what it actually feels like internally for you, not based on your memory of an image. And then once you have a sense of the hands, moving back up into the upper trunk, the chest, what's happening there? Recognizing too how what's happening there might be quite different now than it was even 2 minutes ago. We're interested in right now. So is there a sense of solidity or of space? Of connection or disconnection? Of temperature, heat or cold? What's present in the chest area? And moving into the mid-range of the trunk, just below the ribs, but above the belly. I have an area that maybe often gets forgotten about. What's happening there? And then moving into the belly, pelvis, maybe quite a bit going on there in terms of temperature, in terms of space, in terms of solidity or weight, in terms of fluidity, connectedness. What do you notice? Moving into the hips and down into the upper legs. What can you feel? Is there a sense of weight? Is there a sense of space? What about temperature? What about fluidity or connectedness? And then into the knees. And down into the lower legs. Between the ankle and the knee. What's happening there? What can you feel? It might be as you move through the body, there are areas where you realize you don't feel very much in that section of the body because you've never paid attention to it. The more you practice paying attention, you start to realize, in fact, there's lots going on you can sense there. And then into the feet, the ankle, and then the feet. Her feet have like 108, or I can't quite remember the number, but a huge number of bones. Very complicated structures. Probably, maybe some people can feel all those bones. Maybe you can't. Can you feel a sense of solidity or temperature? Or it's just sensation? Maybe there's a part of the body that wants your attention again. Maybe before you didn't feel anything and you have a sense, oh, I think I can feel something there now. So at this point, just go to wherever it is in the body that's calling you. Examine it further. Or you could scan the whole body again. You could go in a different direction. You can stay in a particular point. It's your practice. You get to decide. But rather than getting stuck on some thought or story or worry, you're staying with the body. You're experiencing what's actually happening right now. And in the process of doing that, you might notice whether, in fact, the mind as well feels a bit more at ease and relaxed. So this practice of working with your body is something that is not a one-time kind of process. It's something, just as Mr. Keogh talked about in his examples, you can do all the time at any point. And it's a very skillful and helpful way to be in charge of your own life, to not let your thoughts and feelings and reactivities run your life, but instead to be present and have the presence of mind, just as the word Mr. Keogh used, the presence of mind to know, to act with intention rather than with impulsivity. Any final thoughts, Mr. Keogh, before we check out?
Other than take care of yourself, be as good as you possibly can be, hang in there, and we'll be back.
Thank you, Mr. Keogh. Thank you, all of you. Best wishes for the coming weeks. We hope to see you before too much longer, and take care of yourself and each other. Bye-bye.